Well, hello everyone. We are in Norcross, Georgia today at the home of a very dear friend of mine, David Grayson. My friendship with David began within weeks of joining Fulton Concrete Company in 2002. Fulton at that time, bought nearly all of their aggregates from Vulcan Materials, and David was the VP of Sales for Georgia for the state, I believe, and he can clarify later when we talk. So he and I immediately connected. David and I had many common interests, hunting being one of the more notable, so we had much to talk about and much to do together, in addition to tackling concrete issues and opportunities. And I'm truly indebted to David for his efforts to introduce me to the construction community in Metro Atlanta. At that time, Fulton wasn't heavily into DOT work, but within no time, thanks to David, we were steadily given opportunities to demonstrate our capabilities to the DOT highway contractors. This pivot for us was really important because as the Great Recession unfolded, and much of our yardage was highway projects in the wake of that housing collapse. So it was very, very helpful. David has many unique qualities that don't often come together in one leader. He's a very competitive and driven man, which you particularly notice if you've ever been hunting with him. And at the very same time, he's a gentleman. He's very cordial, he's very diplomatic, and he's eager to foster collaborative and productive working relationships. Many of you who are listening to this podcast are likely to have been, like me, the beneficiary of David's kindness, his generosity, and skills as a wise counselor. Well, David, it is so good to be with you today, my friend. Please dive in and tell us about yourself, your background, where you grew up, the usual biographical details that really help us to understand who you are.
Well, thank you, Bill. I appreciate the opportunity to do this. And I have to say, I think this is outstanding that you're taking the time to interview people within the industry. I'm flattered that you even wanted to interview me, but certainly the ready-mix industry and the fact that you're doing this, I think, is only going to enhance the opportunity for the ready-mix industry to grow and prosper. So a little bit about myself. I grew up in the Southeast. I was, for the most part, I was raised in Atlanta, but born in Birmingham. Moved to Atlanta in the early 60s before Atlanta really took off, which was very interesting, and moved back to Birmingham in high school and finished high school in Birmingham. And after that, went to Auburn and got a finance degree. Now, the best part for me, I tell you, certainly in my childhood, was I spent a lot of time hunting and fishing, which I still to this day love to do. And one of the great things about Auburn being a small community is I had that opportunity to hunt and fish with fraternity brothers and the occasional opportunity to go on trips with them. And that has been a big, big part of my life is the hunting and fishing and the camaraderie that one builds with doing that. So after Auburn, I graduated with a degree in finance and always dreamed about being a stockbroker and thought that's what I want to do. Decided that I needed to mature a little bit. So I thought, well, I'll get into the banking business and then move from banking into being a stockbroker, and had the opportunity to do that right out of school. And I worked for Wachovia up in North Carolina and did that for almost 3 years. And in that time, I married my college sweetheart, for lack of a better word, Barbie. She and I met at Auburn. She's from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but we met at Auburn. And we got married soon after I had started working at Wachovia, and realized pretty quickly that I did not want to be in the banking business. That was not something I was interested in. But also, I guess I was smart enough to realize that I probably wasn't mature enough to handle investments for people. I just felt like I was a bit young. One of the things that I guess I had battled all my life, even up until, a few years ago, is I consider myself to be a very introverted person, and had to really, during high school and my early working career, had to work diligently to try to train myself to be more confident, to be more outgoing, to be more communicative. And so I thought, you know what, I need to get into sales. So from Wachovia, I jumped into working in the ready mix business, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But had the chance to go to work for Williams Brothers, and that was a pivotal point in my career, but more importantly in my personality, because it forced me to get out there and get out of my comfort zone and develop my ability to communicate and talk with people.
David, what year roughly was that when you made that move and went to Williams Brothers?
That was, early 85. Okay. And it's kind of interesting. I can still remember to this day washing my hands in the men's restroom when Horace Williams made the comment, "We sold the company."
Oh, my.
So that was a bit stressful, but quickly realized that everybody was staying that was there. Right. So, but it was an interesting moment. But again, a great part of my life, and I'm certainly thrilled that it happened that way. On a personal note, again, I've been married 41 years, end of this month, Barbie and I. We have 3 sons. All 3 sons are married. And as of September 1st of 23, I had no grandchildren. And as of now, I have 3 grandsons, and a 4th grandson is expected mid-September of this year. So from 0 to 4. So as you well know, Bill, being a grandparent is a great thing, and it can take time. And so you have to figure out how to balance your time between the things you love to do. I'm still working a little bit, and then trying to be a grandfather. So it's a great time in my life, and God has blessed me beyond belief. So very, very happy about that.
David, tell us, I'm very eager to hear more. I'd like to hear more about the Williams Brothers, and then certainly hear how you moved into construction aggregates, where you spent much of your life. So kind of get us through that. In other words, you joined Williams Brothers in the mid '80s, and soon, but not long before they were sold to Blue Circle. So talk us through some of that.
Well, it was an interesting time. Wanted to get into sales. I knew the sales manager at Williams Brothers at that time, and had met Tim Christian, and went down, interviewed. They put me in a sales role, basically threw me a set of keys and said, "Go do it." There wasn't a lot of training back in those days, so you have to kind of learn on your own. But again, soon after joining them, Blue Circle acquired us, and Tim, Bill Wagner, a number of people that were there at that time continued owning key management roles. So it really wasn't an unsettling thing at all.
Right.
But that job exposed me to so many people and again helped me develop my skills to sell and do things. And I remember my father said, hey, you ought to think about taking do a Dale Carnegie course or something. So I paid for a Dale Carnegie course myself and did that. Again, it's kind of interesting. In my class, and that was, I don't remember the year, but say 87, maybe 88, there were 4 Fulton Ready Mix guys
no kidding.
In that class. So
how about that?
And really interesting time. So I had a chance to meet some of the other folks at that time. But, that's really where I learned to sell. And it wasn't something that clicked immediately for me. I think when you sell and you take on one of those roles, it takes time. You have to work at it. It's just not easy. It can be for some people. Some are more natural at it, but I worked at it and read a lot and watched other people. So I was able to develop some of those skills. But Blue Circle acquired us. I think Tim left after a few years. John Williams was still there for a bit. Horace was there for a bit. But it then started, it changed. It became much more, it was, very much a family business. And then it started morphing towards more of a corporation. Blue Circle went through a number of presidents until Ray Easton landed there. And, Ray was that rock solid, very mature, polished, very tough and aggressive CEO, and expected a lot out of everybody. But that is really when Blue Circle started to prosper. And there were a lot of great companies in the industry, but at that time, that's who I worked with, and you could see a significant development within the company, and they did things in a much more professional manner. So again, great experience, and then I left. Let's see, I had an opportunity.
Let me pause you just a quick moment, just for a question that popped into my head. So at Williams Brothers, was your sales focus broad? Was it all the different residential, commercial, highway work, so on and so forth, or did you work into a particular area? Could you say a little bit about that?
Sure. Vulcan was very segmented. Williams Brothers was very segmented in its approach. So you had a residential side of the business, you had a commercial side of the business, you had a lumber side of the business, you had a masonry side of the business. So, within the masonry, J. Williams ran that, and they had brick, block. They were I guess they were the largest block producer in Georgia until the Port Wall business took over. Right. But So each area was segmented. I was in the commercial sales side, so I sold to the Beers and the Hardens and Holders and those. And a lot of others, but the business was set up very well. Lawrence Yancey, who has now passed, I consider a dear friend, and learned a lot from Lawrence. And he headed up the residential side of the business. Then Bill Wagner, who I worked with for a number of years and maintained a friendship after that, headed up the commercial side of the business. And so, and then Bill eventually took over. And so that's how they had it set up. Then Williams Brothers spun off the lumber side of the business. I don't remember exactly when that occurred, but they then became, again, Blue Circle, and eventually now they're Argos.
Very, very interesting. You and I have known each other for quite a few years, and we've had a lot of opportunity to learn about each other. But you're giving me details that I didn't know, and I'm sure others who are listening are learning as well. So that's great. Talk a little bit now about how Vulcan came into your life. Talk about that.
Okay, there was division president for Vulcan at the time, a gentleman named Mac Badgett. I had the chance to interface with Mac. He would come to Blue Circle's office to see Ray Easton, and it just happened 3 or 4 times. I would be going from one side of the building to the other and would run into him in the lobby, and Mac and I started getting to know each other. So when he would come by, if I saw him, I'd speak to him, and one thing led to another, and he was looking for a sales manager at the time, and I had to do this very quietly. I didn't want to alert everybody at Blue Circle, but I agreed to interview with them, and this is something that I've always respected Mac for. Mac contacted Ray and said, "Hey, I want to interview David, but I don't want to do it without telling you I'm doing it and seeking your permission." And Ray said, "That's fine." And I learned to respect Mac a lot for that, because I think that was, if you're going to be selling to people and you're having this business relationship, trust is the most important thing you can have between a buyer and seller. And all he did was reinforce that with Ray. So subsequently joined Vulcan in early '93, I think it was. Years start to... Wow. And so I came in as an area sales manager, so I had basically 2/3 of the state. I had Metro Atlanta and South Georgia, and another gentleman had North Georgia. And after a couple years, I basically became the state sales manager, and that was probably in '95 maybe, and a wonderful time at Vulcan.
Let me ask you this. I was just curious as you were talking through that, but what was do you think, looking back, or can you remember, what was the attraction? In other words, you mentioned you built the relationship with Mac and got to know him, and of course you knew about Vulcan, but what was the attraction?
Well, I had grown up with Vulcan. My father worked for Vulcan for almost 30 years, I guess it was. And in our household, there was never a mention that you would work for Vulcan. That's just the way it was. Nepotism was not going to be a part of it. And he had announced mandatory retirement at 65. He had announced he was retiring, obviously. And at that point, Mac told me I felt like I could go ahead and approach you. And I had initially said I wasn't interested for that reason, right, is that he would be there. There would be an overlap of maybe a year, 9 months, something like that. But so the attraction was, I just felt like I had been at Williams Brothers for almost 10 years, and I just felt like a change was necessary, number one. And knowing Vulcan, knowing that industry, I just felt like I was going home, for lack of a better word. And I literally hadn't been there a couple of weeks, and I knew that was the best decision I could have made. Some people look back on those decisions and say, wow, I wish I hadn't done that. Right. In my case, I was thrilled I had done it. And I loved my time at Blue Circle. Yeah. I loved the ready mix industry. And but I also felt like, I could learn another segment of construction materials, that being aggregates. And what was so great is I knew the ready mix industry. So what better way to go sell aggregate to ready mix customers than their industry? So early on, it wasn't, I'd been there a week, and I think, Johnny Center at Thomas called me, and next thing you know, we picked up a plant that was a huge plant that I know it bothered another aggregate producer in Atlanta at that time, but Johnny wanted to make a change, and it worked out. And so it was a great transition for me, and it enabled me to learn a new industry but keep my hand in an old one.
Yes.
So really enjoyed that.
Talk a little bit about aggregates in terms of, because it always struck me, I mean, you seem like you really, really love that business. I mean, as I got to know you, you enjoyed it. You enjoyed the people in that business, but talk a little bit about, what was pleasurable, enjoyable, and gratifying to you for the, in your time in aggregates.
Well, I will start, and this is not in necessarily any particular order, but the fact that I'm sitting here talking to you, a dear friend, someone that we have spent a lot of time with during our careers, and since then. You've been to my farm and hunted with me, and we enjoy each other's company. It's the people you meet in this industry that I think are extraordinarily unique. They're great people. I probably shouldn't mention names, but I will. You mentioned Tim Christian earlier, Tim, Bill, Pat Mooney, Ready Mix people, Tony Cantrell, David Ernst. Oh my gosh, rock solid people, wonderful people. A lot of folks in the asphalt side of the industry, the Dan Garcias, Michael Bells, Frank Crumleys, all these people, Snell's. I think back at, the first time I ever walked into E.R. Snell's office as an aggregate producer, and Richard Snell put his arm around me literally and said, I look forward to working with you. And I just knew I was home.
Right.
It was a unique group of people. Robin Snell, Jimmy Camp, people that to this day, I pick the phone up and call them and we talk, and they're retired and I've long been gone from that business. Yes. So it's, the John Harrisons, Arnie Pittmans, I'm leaving a lot of people out.
I know,
but
it's hard, isn't it? It
is. There's just so many. So the people are so important in this industry, and they're such fine people. And again, one of the first people I talked to was Johnny Center, and the Bill Davises and Alan Wessels now that running Thomas, and all of those folks are such good people. It was enjoyable. And the thing about and I've told this to my own sons as they've pursued their careers, businesses, sometimes you don't always land where this is what I want to do.
Right.
But you can always find the good, and that, I'm going to learn something. I don't care where you are.
Right.
Learn all you can. It's going to be applicable for the next job, but the people in those industries are what make or break you. Your coworkers.
Yes.
I had the pleasure of working with you once we were in the ready mix business, but Jimmy Fleming's, David Worthington's, all these folks that I had a chance to work with, that I'm still friends with after all these years, has been a blessing for me, and I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Well, and as you're talking, it's making me think a lot about, why I've enjoyed, being in construction materials, the broader, topic, the broader realm, and everything you say about everything you've said, I echo. And then I'm thinking also, what else? And I think that, and I want to hear from you on this, but people jokingly say, "Oh, you're a gravel salesman." We talk about gravel and mud. We use these terms, mud for concrete, gravel for construction aggregates. But really and truly, it's a sophisticated business. It's very sophisticated. And so there's opportunity, for those who have analytical, and, technical orientations and, there's a lot to learn. It's not that cut and dry. Would you say a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Probably, other than the people, the thing that appealed to me most, you talked about analytical, but I would look at it more from a strategic standpoint. You have the opportunity. First of all, let me back up. Aggregate business is, to me, one of the most sort of symbiotic relationships you can have. You can't have concrete without aggregate.
That's right.
You can't have asphalt without aggregate.
Right.
And I think, ag is probably virtually half of a yard of concrete. In the asphalt business, it's 95% of what asphalt is. So an asphalt producer needs an aggregate producer. A ready-mix producer needs an aggregate producer. So you're already starting on sort of equal footing in that we need each other. Now, let's figure out how best to serve each other. So for me, the strategic part, understanding markets, where your prices need to be competitive. How can we push service and quality to where we can gain a little bit more than somebody else? Because trust me, in all the years I was at Vulcan, it was not just about price. And I had a lot of customers complain about, you're too damn high, you're too damn high. But we also gave them their money's worth, and it all comes down to value. And so for me, it was the strategy of it all, the marketing, the nuances of it. It's not just if all you do is throw a price at somebody, you're missing the boat. Right. And then you talked about analytical. Nobody helped move me in that direction than you. And I will say that right now, I learned a lot about the analytical side of the business from you especially on the technical side. And you want to be everything to that ready-mix customer. But one thing I learned from you was consistency. If you're an ag producer, you better give me consistent quality. I don't care where you are. You can be a little coarser, a little finer, but don't flip-flop day to day. It crushes the ready-mix guy, so it makes it difficult. So those things enabled me to, you put more into it than just a price.
Again, as we do these interviews, invariably my mind starts jumping like a jackrabbit. You trigger so many thoughts. One thought that came to mind when you were talking about what you enjoyed in the idea of the necessity for being very strategic, and you haven't even gotten into or mentioned the complexities of, which I was beginning to know when we came to Vulcan, or beginning to hear about, but how you've got the different gradations in the quarry, and you're trying to get this, and you do this grade or this sizing, and it produces more of this, and you've got to figure out how to make it all work and sell everything. I mean, it's very complicated. But one thing that just popped into my head when you were talking was, I can remember, I think you and I were together, and we were talking about some of this years ago, and it just hit me, the metaphor really for construction materials, and certainly in Atlanta, it's like a three-dimensional chess game. And you and I use that metaphor to kind of help us, as to what you were saying. It's like I've never played three-dimensional chess. I've seen pictures of it, and I get it. But that's what it is. You've got cement, you've got aggregates, you've got you've got ready mix, and you've got these three different games, and they're all interconnected, and they're going at the same time. And if you don't look at it that way, you can make some serious mistakes. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great point, Bill. Every quarry deposit within one quarry, you can have multiple material seams, for lack of a better word, that are going to impact gradations. You You're chasing one size for the asphalt industry, which may or may not impact what's going on the ready-mix side of the business. And so the three-dimensional chess game is only sort of ratcheted up in today's world because most of the big ag companies are all publicly traded companies. So you're wanting to maintain market share. You're wanting to raise your price. You're wanting to protect your backyard, so to speak. You've got new people trying to enter the business and open up quarries. You're trying to hold on to your customers. So there are so many nuances to not just keeping that customer and getting a good price, but how are we able to push our stock price higher and higher? And let me assure you, when you've worked with a big corporation, that's what it's about.
Yes.
And, that's one of the challenges in the industry is staying customer focused and not just internally focused within chasing profitability. Everybody wants to be profitable, but it is a balancing act between volume, price, and quality. And, the operating side of the business always used to say, sell what we make. And the sales side of the aggregate business would always say, make what we sell. And you have to find that middle ground and that balance. And again, if your customer trusts you and you've got a good relationship, and don't let anybody tell you customer relationships aren't the most important thing, because they are. But I could walk into you when you were running Fulton and say, hey, we've got this issue. And as long as you weren't surprised, you didn't yell at me.
Right.
But there are lots of times where you have to ask each other to be flexible.
Yes.
And if you trust each other and know you're looking out for each other's best interest, it generally works out.
Yes. Great points, David. And I can see right now we could spend the rest of the day right here at your dining room table, which is a beautiful table, by the way. I really like it. And it's got one of my bowls on it, which is even better. Let me think. Talk a little bit about, just take a little more time on, the relationship between construction aggregates and ready mix, and you've kind of alluded to what is so, from a ready mix producer's standpoint, what are they looking to you for? What's really essential in that relationship with respect to the relationship, with respect to the product? You've alluded to that, but say a little bit about, if you could kind of boil it down to what is so critical.
I don't know if I can boil it down or not. So, because there are so many factors that are involved. The things that I heard through the guys that worked for me or directly, product quality, when times are busy, product availability.
Yes.
I can remember back in 2006 when it wasn't, hey, you're too high price-wise. It was, are you going to be able to supply me?
Right.
Again, when asphalt market is booming, you end up with sometimes coarser ready-mix material because you're kind of trying to pull some of those 7s or 89s out of the mix. And so there are challenges there again. So the things that I used to hear most about is, all right, wet sand.
Yes.
Flat and elongated, inconsistent gradations. And those seem to be the big three. Certainly price, everybody talks about price, but I truly believe price is not even in the top 3 or 4. You got to be competitive, but I don't have to be competitive to someone who doesn't have aggregate. If it's not there, good luck. So those were the keys to me.
Yes.
And again, if you have good communication with your customers and from customer to producer, it generally works itself out.
Flat and elongated. It's all coming back to me. And I remember pulling into Fulton Industrial there at Fulton Concrete, or pulling in our street, following one of a load of 57s, and it's coming up that hill, and I'm watching all the water pouring out of the back, and I'm calling you, and I'm saying, David, don't sell me water, please.
We never charged you for the water.
Yeah, I know. Just a slight change in gears a little bit, but I'm curious to hear if you could touch on a little bit some of the really significant, notable changes in the industry, in construction materials, in aggregates and such. But what jumps out? What was over the last 10 years or so? Some of the big changes.
I'd say from the point of challenges, I don't care if it's ag or ready mix or what it is, but it's people. It's finding good people. On the ready mix side, all I ever heard was drivers. I got to get drivers. On the ag side, it was plant personnel. And I will say one of the beautiful parts of nepotism is that plant personnel could hire family members who knew the business, because the biggest challenge is, how do you inform people out there? Again, most folks don't wake up as a child saying, I want to be in the ready mix business or the aggregate business. It's just not something that clicks. Right. You hear about all these other professions or these other trades, but so that's been a huge challenge for the broader construction industry, is personnel and quality personnel. And so that will continue to be a challenge. Another challenge to me is, and I'll just say the term politics.
Yeah.
It's the ratcheting up of the NIMBYs, not in my backyard. Yeah. Environmental challenges, things that 20, 30 years ago were less of an issue now are a huge issue. Stormwater runoff, all these things that most companies are really doing a good, diligent job, I think, of making sure they're good stewards of the environment. And, I don't know any company that purposefully does anything that might negatively impact. But that is going to continue to be a challenge, and so it will be there. I think other things that maybe from a more positive standpoint, and you mentioned it earlier, the industry has become more professional. Yeah. And I noticed, there was a clear switch back in probably 04, 05, when the aggregate industry especially became more sophisticated. You had a changing of the guard where you had newer, younger people coming in who didn't have this preconceived bias of, I'm going to keep everything, I'm not going to give anything up. Well, sometimes it's good to give up a little market share for the greater good, because you may find out you're not making a lot of money, and all of a sudden, if I do this or do that, I can be more profitable. And that's really what it's about. Back in when I first started back in the 80s in the ready mix business, I always heard the term trophy hunters. You had folks out there who wanted a job. Well, after it's over, they found out they lost money. Well, what's the point of doing that? It's ridiculous. And, another challenge within the industry, and I think people have done a great job, is safety. And safety is such a critical part. And I will applaud you, Bill, when you came in to Vulcan Ready Mix after the acquisition of Fulton and Tucko. That was one of your focal points, and I think the industry as a whole continues to do a wonderful job there. So that's a big change from 20, 30 years ago. just how you approach things. So, again, the big challenge is people.
Yes.
The big positive is that the industry becomes more sophisticated, and I think, again, you doing these podcasts is only going to help pull the ready mix industry together and make everybody realize what a great opportunity they have in front of them.
So, David, as you look back over your life, and you and I, we're at the season of life where we do that. We look back and we reflect. I'd like for you to do that and tell me a little bit about people who really, some of the people who really influenced you, and whether they influenced your leadership style, your approach to business or selling, whatever. But just talk a little bit about some of the people that really had a big effect on you.
I would probably say, first and foremost, my father taught me to have a strong work ethic and to never compromise. And it's something I used to tell everybody: be moral, legal, and ethical.
Yes.
And if you live your life that way, you're going to be fine. And the other thing he professed, and times literally beat into me, was that if you make a mistake, own up to it. It was unaccepted to ever do anything that went against somebody else without having to go face them, literally face to face, and apologize. And those three things have been a part of my life, and I'm never going to compromise when it comes to that. He could be a very challenging person. He was not always an easy father, but I learned a great deal from him, and where I'm at, in large part because of that. I mentioned, Mac Badgett earlier. A lot of Mac's attributes I tried to emulate. There was, if I had a mentor, I guess, at Vulcan while I was there, was probably Danny Shepard. Danny was much more like me in that he came up on that sales side of the business, and I learned a lot from him as well. And I'll tell you, and this is, I've told my boys this too, a couple of things. Find a mentor, wherever you are. Find somebody, whether you label them your mentor or not.
Right.
If they are of quality character and they're doing things the right way, emulate them. Try to take the good from everybody. And I'll tell you, I have learned probably more from what I would classify as not great bosses and not great leaders within companies I've worked for, be it banking, be it ready mix, be it aggregate. But you notice what isn't working, and you can notice what is working, and focus on what's working. And so those have been the people that have probably had more of an impact on me than anything.
Really, really good. And I think I remember Alan Wessel, when I asked this question of Alan, he actually, back in his Vulcan days, he worked around your father, and he identified your dad as being very, very influential for some of the reasons that you cited, that he was pretty challenging, but in a very positive way. So that's really, really good. Last question, and I'm always eager to hear what people have to say about this one, but in terms of offering advice to people coming into the construction materials industry, particularly in light of the times that we're in today and how things are and where the industry is. But, young people coming in, regardless of the role, but just general advice for coming into this industry. What would you offer?
I guess my response, Bill, would be, and again, it's really any industry, it's applicable. But I have over the last few years I was at Vulcan. Then when I went into private equity, these past 6 years, after leaving Vulcan, I left Vulcan at the beginning of 17. Vulcan left me and went into private equity and have had a incredible opportunity to build an aggregate business. As of last Friday, we sold that aggregate business. Yes. But I had a chance to work with young people. And this is a long-winded way to answer your question, but it is something I tell folks, that is, make yourself indispensable and necessary wherever you are. I don't care what it is you're doing. If you're brand new in ready-mix sales or technical side, right, or if it's in ag,
right,
bust your butt, work hard, don't, just stay focused and find ways to help. And what I mean by that is, if you see things that aren't working,
yes,
point them out and don't bitch about them.
Right.
Don't say, oh, that's not working. Find a solution. And I think that is imperative for anybody, is if you are looking for nuances within a business to help make that business more effective and efficient, you're going to become indispensable and people are going to want you around. The other thing is, help the people around you. Don't focus on self, and don't say, I'm going to push my way to the top. I would rather hire somebody that's going to help the guy next to them, and or say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll find an answer to that. That is more important to me than the guy that acts like he knows what he's doing and is more about self. Be a team player. Those are critical attributes. And then for a young person coming into the industry, read. Ask questions. Go to people that you respect and say, tell me, what are some of the things you did right? What are some of the things you did wrong? And, we all hear about goal setting, and that's wonderful, and that's important. But asking people that have experienced the ups and downs of an industry can save you so much time and effort, so you're not falling into the same pitfalls they did. And, I guess lastly, and sometimes I was good about this, sometimes not so good. And that is taking criticism, positive feedback, ask for it. We all say, oh, we love feedback until you get it. And then we all, So I heard a quote, and I don't remember who said it, but it was a political quote from years ago, and it was, have the courage to lead and the confidence to listen.
Yes.
And what that means to me, obviously, is I don't care if you're in a so-called leadership position. Lead. Be there early. Work late. Yes. Work smart. Work hard. Lead. And then have the confidence to listen to other people's ideas. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them. Doesn't mean you have to carry them out unless you're being told to. And that probably would have helped me in my career. But to have the confidence that you can learn every day from the people around you, I think is critical. And so to me, that's what I would tell people is learn to communicate, learn to listen, and work hard.
Those are really, really good points, David, and I'm so glad you brought those out. And as you were speaking, one of the things that came to mind, I'll be honest with you, is that I look back on the 6 years we were together at Vulcan. When after the acquisition of Fulton, and you and I were working together, which is kind of funny because when I came to Fulton, in a way, you worked for me, right? You were my aggregate supplier, and then the next thing you know, I worked for you because you were over the.
We worked together.
We worked together. But here's what I would say. My point, what I wanted to say is that when I think about you and our time at Vulcan, I mean, you were typically one of the first to show up in that office, and you came in. I can see you right now with a big, I don't know not a backpack, not really a briefcase, but you had a big bag bulging with papers and notes, and into the office you came, and your desk was spread out with papers and stacks of papers with Post-it tabs, and then you would often be the last person to leave at the end of the day, as the division president. And so you were a great model to me and many others. You have been, continue to be. And so I'm grateful that we got time together. I feel like we're quitting way too quick. There's so much more to talk about. And we may come back. As I get through all of this, I have to circle back with some folks because there's so much that we can that we can and share and talk about. So again, thank you for taking time out of your day to visit with us and to share your story, David. And grateful for your friendship, and wish you and Barbie and your clan all the best.
Well, thank you, Bill, and it's been an honor to talk with you. And as you and I have discussed many, many times in the past, it's a wonderful industry.
Yes.
And I love having been a part of it, and continue to be a part of it as these next few years in front of both of us. I hope that we'll have an opportunity to talk a lot.